We'll start this off with introducing our keynote speaker who will be speaking from Kenya to Route 66. Brennen Matthews will be discussing his journey from Kenya to Route 66, the life-changing impact that a trip down Route 66 and across America had on him and his family, and the launch of Route magazine. Brennen is the editor for Route magazine, the nation's leading classic Americana, Route 66 and road travel magazine. He's been a senior editor with leading magazines for more than a decade and an award-winning travel writer for more than 20 years. He regularly works with iconic actors and musicians for Route and has found a connection to Route 66 and Roadside America. Brennen is an active member of the Route 66 Road Ahead Partnership and has overseen the development of the 2019 Route 66 Missouri Guide, the 2020 Route 66 Arizona Guide and Rack Card, and numerous other Mother Road marketing tools. He's passionate about road travel and has visited every drivable stretch of Route 66 8 times in the past 4 years. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology with a minor in Creative Writing and a Master of Arts in International Development Studies with a minor in English Literature. His work has been featured in leading magazine titles across the world, from Africa to Europe to South and North America.
Thank you very much, Jim, for the welcome. And this is definitely my first Miles of Possibility conference, so I'm definitely excited to be here. And I definitely want to thank the ladies for all the work that they've done, and Jeff as well, and for all the preparation and so much hard work. I work closely with Cheryl, so I know how much time and effort she's put in, and I'm sure everyone else has as well. So thank you guys for that and for everything that you do and are doing for Route 66, and all the help that you've given us with Route Magazine as well. Okay, so I tend not to do a lot of speaking engagements. I tend to do a lot of talks, but not a lot of speaking. So it's not, I say no to a lot, but I was excited about this one. And so I'll ask you guys to bear with me, as I tend to rabbit trail a little bit, and I tend to be a little chatty sometimes. So I'm trying to really focus myself in to make sure that I stay focused on the topic at hand and don't get too much into storytelling that will take up a lot of time. I had asked Jeff and Cheryl last night if it's okay if I start with a joke. So I have a joke. I have one joke. And my wife thinks it's a groaner, and my son thinks it's a groaner, but his 13, 14-year-old friends think that it's very funny. So I'm going to share it with you guys, and hopefully somebody thinks it's actually amusing. So a dog one day walks into a bar, and he walks up to the counter and he says to the bartender, "Please give me a beer." Bartender says, "I'm sorry, but we don't serve dogs here." The dog says, "Well, I'm not leaving without a drink." Bartender says, "Look, you have to go." Bartender says, "Look, you got to go. We don't serve dogs." And the dog says, "Look, I'm going nowhere. You can't make me go." So the bartender pulls out a gun and he says, "Look, I'm going to shoot you if you don't leave this bar." And the dog says, "You won't do it." So the bartender shoots him in the foot. And the dog jumps up and, he's hurt, and he limps out. Sorry for all the dog lovers, but and a week goes by, and it's a busy day. And then the doors swing open, the old Western doors. They swing open, and there's the dog, and he's fully dressed up in his cowboy regalia, and he has a crutch on. He's wearing crutches and a cast. And he hobbles up to the bar, and he says, "I'm looking for the man that shot my paw." No? Okay, that's the punchline. "I'm looking for the man that shot my paw," because he got shot in the foot. Now I can't see you guys, but I'm not really sure if you think that's amusing.
Got it.
But,
Yeah.
We'll call that the Zoom delay there on the reactions.
okay.
It is a groaner, Brennan, but it made me laugh. So thank you.
Oh, come on. Anyhow, it made my 13-year-old sons laugh, and so he thought that wasn't amusing. He thought they should have sided with him. Anyhow, so I was asked to talk about from Kenya to the Mother Road. So there is a lot of discussion, if you will, about European travelers coming to the road. And then we see a lot, for especially English-speaking countries, but also Germany, Spain, Italy, France, and then other places like Australia, New Zealand. To a degree, we have from a lot of Japanese are really discovering Route 66 and Dutch and etc. So that's very exciting. But we very seldom actually talk about Africa. And there's probably good reason for that. But I wanted to really dive into that a little bit because I thought that would be an interesting topic to sort of look at not just my travel from Kenya, from Africa, but really in general, why there's not, and maybe even how we can change that down the line. But if you look, Africa is quite far from America. So in general, for the most part, you have to go through other locations, which is often through maybe England or Paris, through Rome, through Frankfurt, through Geneva. But there's usually at least 2 flights. And a lot of those will fly, let's say, maybe into New York. So there's even probably a domestic flight. And so it's just a lot more cumbersome trying to get from Africa over to America. And so you just don't see nearly as much of it. The interesting thing is that out of 54 countries in Africa, the majority, probably 99% of travelers who actually go to America for any reason, well, that's not true, who go to America specifically for road trips like the Grand Canyon or Route 66, the vast majority will come out of South Africa. South Africa is the most developed country on the continent. They have the most money and also the most exposure. And so they're the country that will have their own road trips. So for example, South Africa has Route 62 and it's in the Western Cape. And it's actually nicknamed the Route 66 of Africa. And in 2017, CNN voted it as one of the top 10 road trips in the world to take. No other country within Africa really has a road trip culture. South Africa doesn't have much of one, but they'd have the closest version of a road trip culture. When I spoke to, because I reached out and spoke to all the major travel companies in the major markets in Africa. South Africa is the only one that had ever heard of Route 66, and Flight Centre is probably their largest travel company, if you will. And they actually do have a 16-day Route 66 itinerary that they offer travelers. The interesting thing, though, is that when I had asked them, how many people would you say you guys on an annual basis actually sell this Route 66 trip to? To quote them, they said, from their experience, it's more of a tailored offering for customers who want to explore something that's not related to city life. So if you actually look at that, I spoke with the Route 66 Museum over in Clinton, and, that's one of our favorites. And if you look at it, in 2017, they had 2,000 people from England come over. They had 720 Canadians, so drive across the border, and only 130 people come over to do Route 66 and visit their museum from Africa, the whole continent, 54 countries. And they were all from South Africa. 2018, you see the numbers went up slightly for England, but they went down for Canada. And again, only 142 people compared to 2,160 for the UK. And 2019, it went back down slightly with 1,998, still down even more with Canada, 662, and down even more again with Africa. So you can see the numbers for the Europeans coming, with England probably being the largest, astronomically larger than Africa. When people in Africa think about America, and they do a lot, America is probably the #1 destination that African students want to get to, immigrants want to get to, and even for tourism that people want to get to. But when they think about America, they think about New York City and Times Square. They think about California and the beaches in Beverly Hills and Hollywood. They think about Las Vegas and doing the Strip. They think about Chicago And they think about all of these things because for the most part, that's what we see on television. A lot of people don't realize this, but American culture has been, it's probably the number one export that America has had. It's certainly often thought to be one of the main reasons that the Cold War was won by the West. The American culture that's been exported played such a role in places like the Ukraine, Russia, Eastern Germany, and etc. But it did for us too, that it really shaped the way a lot of us see America and have understood America. So American television, American movies, we can all tell you the Kremlin, the CIA, we know Langley, we know the White House, Pennsylvania Avenue. We know about the FBI. We know J. Edgar Hoover, we know Al Capone, we know all of these things. We know all the old Wild West, whether it's Wild Bill Hickok or whether it's Wyatt Earp or whether it's the OK Corral or any of these things. We're very well versed in it because we've all grown up on American television, American movies, and listening to American music as well. One of the big things that causes South Africa to be probably much more in line with European travel and as such road trips and as such Route 66, if you will, is that European-based Kenyans, we have the second largest number of European nationals outside of South Africa with about 4 million white South Africans. The big difference with that is that we are still very connected in many ways to, let's say, England or Ireland or France or Germany, the countries that our people actually came from when they immigrated to Africa. And so with that comes still a lot of cultural commonality, if you will. And so we will take road trips, or we will want to get out there and just stop and have a picnic on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. But Africa doesn't have, and this was actually, I'll get into this, but it was also one of the eye-openers for me with doing road trips across Route 66, is that especially an amazing state like Illinois, is that you're constantly stopping for new towns. You leave Joliet, boom, you're in Wilmington. After Wilmington, boom, Braidwood. After Braidwood, boom, you're in this one and that one. You're leading up to Odell, you're leading up to, or Dwight, and then Odell, and you got Pontiac, and then boom. There's just so many places to stop and get fuel and get a bite to eat, to visit a museum, to take in the roadside attractions, the history, the architecture. Africa doesn't have any of that. Africa, like a lot of the developing places in the world, are very much point A to point B. And so, we'll have small towns. There's nothing to see there. There's not even a gas station. There's probably not any real eatery that would be worth stopping at. There's no real road trip culture. It's a point A to point B. However, America offers something that is distinctly unique. And I don't necessarily know how much domestic Americans understand that and how much it's taken for granted, but it truly is something that is very special. So how did I end up on the Mother Road coming from Kenya, East Africa? Well, as Jim said, before we ever made the move, I spent around 6 years as the editor-in-chief of Destination magazine. Destination was the continent's leading title. It was often referred to, I don't know how many of you know Vanity Fair very well, but it was often referred to as the Vanity Fair of Africa. We were the only ones on the continent with access to and closely working with Hollywood. So I closely worked with Netflix and HBO, Walt Disney, Sony, Universal, Showtime, at Warner Brothers, and etc. And we work constantly with major actors, Ryan Reynolds, John Goodman, Forrest Whitaker, Scarlett Johansson, Patrick Stewart, if you're a Star Trek fan, Ben Kingsley. We just worked with all these amazing people, really promoting their life story and their journey. We got into films that were more iconic, TV, music that was more iconic. But our real bread and butter was we focused on their journey and their stories. And the iconic story of you know, whether it's Forrest Gump or whether it's, you know, Bob Marley or just whatever. We got really into people, and that's what I loved. And we got into, you know, investigative journalism. We got into a lot of travel and tourism journalism. And so I got to work a lot with great advertisers, whether it's Fairmont or Radisson Blue, or whether it's Clark's or Skechers or Johnny Walker or Converse or Bailey's. And we really had a lot of enthusiasm towards storytelling. After a little while, though, after 6 years, I got a little tired and I wanted a change. I had lived in the United States in Los Angeles when I was younger. I was in the entertainment industry and I really loved it, had a great impact on me. Loved America. Still, I've always loved America. And then after that, I went to school in Michigan for 2 years. And then I didn't step foot again, really, other than maybe once or twice back in North America, in the States again for almost 20 years, almost 2 decades. And I really wanted a change. And so I was being courted at the time by Vanity Fair and GQ, 2 New York-based magazines, and much bigger markets. And I thought being in New York would be interesting, would be nice. And so I actually took a sabbatical for about 4 months and went to work. I still worked with Destination, but the plan was to work from New York while we talked with those magazines and others and just seeing whether that was a good fit or not, and whether New York itself was a good fit. So we went over and sorry for the blurry picture, it was low res and they couldn't find a higher one. So we went over to New York and we got into a great hotel that we were put up in, and we just sort of got the feel for the city. My wife and son enjoyed it, but really they said, this is what we expected America to be, but it's not really the relaxing, more laid back life that we were looking for. It's even busier than Nairobi. And so, you know, why don't we close this opportunity for now, and why don't we go up to Toronto? Now, I have dual citizenship. I'm a Canadian and I am a Kenyan. And so we could go up to Toronto, and that's what we did. And we set ourselves up a little bit, and we sort of looked a lot. We prayed a lot. We're Christians, and so we prayed and we looked and we wondered and we dreamt. I really believe in dreaming. We dreamt a lot, and we sort of said, now what, God? And so we just looked for inspiration. After around 8 months of things not really becoming clear, Kate said, look, let's do a road trip. We need to do a road trip and just get out on the road and just open up our minds. And so I said, where do you want to go? And she said, let's go to California. And I said, well, okay, how do you want to go? And, you know, she viewed me as an expert on California, even though it had been 20 years since I'd been there. But we just started doing research. And like other people on an international level, we found Route 66. We had heard of Route 66, but we knew nothing about Route 66. My son was a huge fan of the film Cars, which most of you will be very familiar with. So we knew of Route 66, and we were in love with the idea of cars and small town America and Radiator Springs. So the more we began to research Route 66, and then we discovered books by people like Jim Hinckley, books like people like Michael Wallace, and we fell in love. I mean, daily we were like enamored and just like, wow, have you seen this? And Kate would be on one website, I'd be on another website, sitting in the same room, and we'd be sharing stuff together. Like, look at this, they're like these giants. We're like, what's a muffler man? Or, you know, they'd be like, wow, there's still neon. For us, neon was always connected to something kind of seedy. It's like the side of town that never quite survived, and they rented rooms by the hour or by the month. And so before that, we had never stayed in a motel before. It was not really part of our culture. Roadside America wasn't part of our culture. We didn't understand any of that. We were very much big city, luxury hotel type people. And so all of this was now showcasing all of these things in a different light with a different perception. And we were thinking that was pretty cool. Like, we were just amazed. And then we started seeing Civil War history, which we were aware of the Civil War, but not of all this cool history that could still be seen. We seen buildings that were dilapidated, that were trying to be, people trying to save them and preserve them. We had never understood that before. You see it, if it's dilapidated, nobody's there, it's a risk for health, safety, you tear it down. So this was introducing us to a whole new idea about life even, and about America. And that was all connected to Route 66. So they say that to understand America is to travel its highways. That's a saying and an idea, a concept that really has always stuck with us. We discovered this to be incredibly true as we traveled America's highways, and in this case, 66. We really do believe in life that the journey is the destination. Our point A to point B trips and way of travel is also our way of seeing the world in Africa. It's also the way that a lot of Americans see the world too. And it's just not the way to see the world. It's a way, but it's not the way. We go through life and we can really accumulate things, or we can accumulate hopefully some things, but also experiences and relationships. And that's how we choose to focus our life now. And Route 66 really introduced us to a lot of people that really shared that same way of seeing the world. The highway wasn't just enthralling, it was obviously an ecosystem in its own right. It's living and breathing. And it was filled with people and history and ideas that were alive and are alive. And that was really electric to us. That just left us thinking, holy cow, like there is so much more than one trip could ever allow us to understand. On that trip, none of you will be surprised to know that we encountered many people from across the world. And that was also super surprising to us. A lot of Europeans from all different countries, Australians, New Zealanders, and yes, one or two South Africans. And that was something we weren't expecting at all. During our trip, we got, this perplexed us. We wanted to know more and more with every mile. What are these people doing here? Why are they so interested in Route 66? And so we got speaking with business owners everywhere and volunteers everywhere. We kept them well occupied, and probably some of them were half sleepy when we showed up, but they woke up quickly and we got having some great conversations. And one of them, a business owner in Seligman, when we asked about this, she said, and I want to quote her. She said, the myth around Route 66 and what you can see in Seligman reminds people from these countries, European countries, of a time when they looked at America with envy. It was right after World War II and during a very difficult time in Europe. It was in the US was a wealthy middle class that was able to afford big, shiny cars, holiday travel, and comfortable accommodation along the way. For the Americans, this was just an episode in time, but for the Europeans, it symbolized a period when they dreamed of a better life, and that life was believed to be found in America. That draws people, and I know that others will be speaking more on that, so I don't want to get too much into that, but that really resonated with us and helped us really even garner a wider understanding of what Route 66 really was to many people. Back in Canada, we realized that we'd been bitten by the Route 66 bug, and in a big way. I mean, it really took over our life, and we became major ambassadors. Everyone that we've seen, we showed them 4,000 pictures. We told everybody about the trip. We just were huge proponents of getting out there. We were huge proponents into spending a significant amount of time in Illinois and at each destination. Also, Missouri and Kansas and Oklahoma along the way too. We were just overwhelmed with everything. Those first 4 states were just amazing to us. People said, oh, the Midwest and the middle of the country are going to be kind of boring. They're kind of flat. You're not going to see a lot or do a lot, but wait till you get out west. They couldn't have been more wrong. We were just absolutely taken back. We spent a week in Illinois, a week in Missouri. We spent a week in Oklahoma. We spent, 7 or 8 days in each of the other states. We thought the beginning was just wonderful. And so we became real cheerleaders. But I needed to do more. Now, as a writer, one of the things that really jumped out to me was I was inspired to write a book. All my checking for non-guides and non-information based books, there was a ton of great books like what Jim Hinckley writes that are wonderful, and we've bought a lot of them. So we've invested in them and we support them. But we also realized that there's not a whole lot of non-information based books out there. There weren't a lot of travel logs. Books like Blue Highways or A Lost Continent by Bill Bryson, there just weren't a lot of these great books that really took you on a story that had a lot of information but were entertaining as well. And so that's what I sought to really focus on with the premise, a family from Africa sets out to discover America via the most famous highway in the world, Route 66. So I wasn't really looking to write a book just on 66, but I'm more interested in America and what makes America unique, what makes America as diverse as it is. And that there's a lot of reasons for what makes America that. Route 66 actually is perhaps the perfect example of an artery running through the country that represents all of what America offers, depending where you're at and what you're going to find. And it's just so vivid and so alive that, so more on that later, but the book finally got written, well, not written, but finalized after 4 years of writing and revising and everything that others will understand. It's called Miles to Go. And, but there's a saying in Africa that says, once you've tasted the waters of Africa, you'll be back, or you'll always go back. And we felt the same thing about 66. Doing it once is not enough. It literally is life-changing on so many different levels. And you got to get back on it. You got to get back, not just to do a road trip, even though, frankly speaking, I think everybody in this today will agree that we all need a road trip a couple times a year to recharge our batteries, but for many other reasons. But this time, when we got back on, we wanted to invite some close friends from Africa as well. We wanted to take them down Route 66. We wanted to expose them to the things we've seen and we did. And we wanted them to get a taste of America that would change their perceptions. Ian and Jenny were dear friends. Ian's my best friend. I've known him for a long, long time. He's also from Kenya. Jenny's from South Africa. But they both worked for me in destination. And I wanted them to get over as well. Now, they are big proponents of European travel, but they had never been to America. And so this was exciting for us. But like I said, they came with preconceived ideas on America. And this is going to be something you'll find with a lot of people. They'll have, from Africa, they'll have preconceived ideas. So one was that America is too young of a country to have any actual compelling history, especially when compared to older countries like the UK, France, Italy. When we started out, Ian repeatedly echoed that. He talked a lot about, Europe has the Colosseums, they have Big Ben, they have a Buckingham Palace, they have, there's the Eiffel Tower, there's such a history, such a rich history in Western Europe that America's too young of a country. We're not going to really see or experience anything that's going to be able to measure up to that. And that's why America requires things like Hollywood and Las Vegas to attract people, because there's really not a whole lot of history or culture that's going to be of interest. It's too young of a country. America is a wealthy country without any real poverty or struggle compared to Africa. As such, there's really little innovation and creativity, especially in small towns. I mean, these small towns, there's really not going to be much there. The people aren't really doing anything. It's really a country that's, if you got money, you can do stuff. If you don't have much money, there's not really much to see. You just, it's kind of just old and dilapidated. And Americans are not very friendly. Actually, Americans are kind of arrogant and rude and kind of really abrasive. It's very, have you been to America? And they would just put these accents on that that people back in Africa would put on when they talk about Americans, whether it's a Southern accent or a New York, or, whatever they would tend to perceive from watching TV as an American accent. Never in a positive light, though, and that always kind of irritated us because we love America, we love Americans, and we see significant commonality. And so one of the real things for us is we were really key with these people that we knew were smart, well-traveled, educated, wonderful people. We wanted them to be exposed to real America on 66 and to really see what was happening and who these people were for themselves. We knew it would impact them. We didn't know how much. So as we journeyed down the Mother Road, and we're talking right from Chicago, we watched. And it became very obvious very quickly as their perceptions begin to change. And like I said, they're smart people. They're very highly educated, well-traveled people. They proactively began to engage with volunteers and business owners along the way. We don't have a volunteer culture in Africa. You don't see volunteers anywhere. You're paid to be somewhere or you're not. You don't see a lot of business owners anywhere. Small business isn't something that you tend to see a lot. Like there's not as much of a culture as there is in, let's say, North America or Western Europe. South Africa would have more than others again as a more developed economy, but the rest of Africa, not very much. So they started to really see these volunteers and say, why are you investing your time? Most of them are older. They could have been retired, enjoying their golden years. So, these guys wanted to know, why are you up early in the morning, there late in the afternoon? Why are you investing your time at this museum, at this roadside attraction? Or this is your business. You could hire somebody. Why are you here interacting? This is a museum. Why are you here? Why do you care about being here? They got to really hear people's stories. They got to really see the positivity, the excitement that was being felt and shown. And that really started opening their mind to alternative understandings and perceptions. They encountered unexpected, vibrant culture and history and attractions. The more we traveled, the more they got to learn the history. They got to see that these were once thriving towns, and that, yes, they hit a speed bump with things like the interstate bypassing Route 66 towns. But they got to see that people didn't just roll over and die, but they actually fought to keep their town, their legacy, their significance, their business alive and well. And they had every reason to do so. They weren't obscure. They were interesting, fascinating, creative, cutting edge, inventive, hardworking people who represented something that was significant. Not just from 1926 to 1946, but in 2006 and in 2016. So they started to have a greater appreciation for American ingenuity, American, we're going to do it, American commitment, and all the history that the country, especially along Route 66, offered, and that was being fought to protect and preserve. And they listened to people's stories and got a fuller and clearer picture and understanding of America and Route 66's significance within the country from Chicago to Santa Monica. America was much bigger than its bookends. See, we always think in Africa of the bookends. We think of East Coast, and even that specifically, we think of New York City, West Coast, specifically Los Angeles, and maybe San Francisco. But real America, as we call it, especially at Route, is still out there. It's still there, and it's easy to find if you just get on the road and go looking for it. They realized that, and they were deeply impacted by it. They became very passionate about the history and about the story of struggle and perseverance that they discovered, whether it was the Dust Bowl era or whether it was the growth of the road and, entrepreneurs and towns and cities rising up to meet travelers as they traveled the road, or whether it was during the decline and then, the forming of the associations in Arizona and then Missouri and then onwards, and the people that really had a vision to bring it back. On the road trip back from Santa Monica, we were inspired because we traveled all the way east again together as well. back up to Chicago. And that took we were on that trip for like 3 months together. And the road trip back east from Santa Monica, we were all inspired to do something. We wanted to be able to tell people about Route 66 and about these stories and about these people and about this history and about this culture and about the great things that had happened and about the great things that are happening and about all the hope about what is going to happen and all the people working towards that. We wanted to be able to tell a wider audience, domestically and globally. We're very excited and we supported everything with all of our hearts. So an idea was born. Route Magazine was launched really that October 2017. When I came back, after we had hours and hours of conversation on that trip together about it, and then I got talking with a dear friend, Michael Wallace, who just thought it was like the best idea and something that was very, very needed. And then Jim and I, Hinckley, got talking, and a few others, and there was just a lot of support from the road. And so we said, okay, we weren't intending to launch a magazine, but we see an opportunity, and not just a business opportunity, there is that too, but an opportunity to really tell some great stories. And I love stories, I love storytelling. So Route was going to be that platform. And we just brought together some amazing advertisers, people like Pontiac and Grants, New Mexico, and Pontiac, Illinois, and the Campbell Hotel down in Tulsa, and the big Texan restaurant, and Cattleman's down in Oklahoma, and just so many people were like, yeah, we want to support it. And then writers and people like David Schwartz and Efren Lopez, two of the best Route 66 photographers today, Nick Gerlich, Greg Zaks, Michael Wallace, and Jim. We just had so much support and so much goodwill that the magazine could never have launched without these people and stayed alive without them. It was just, there's a lot that goes into launching a national magazine. It's, just from advertisers to finding the right printer, to writers, photographers, designers, distributors. How do you get it into all the stores? Where is it going to be? There is a lot that people don't understand. It's an enormous undertaking. But that was my background, and we were excited. We're entering our 5th year now. I can't believe we're entering 5 years, and it all just started with a desire to do a road trip across America. And we unexpectedly discovered the highway that's the best, Route 66. We weren't looking for it. We were just looking for a great road trip that would allow us to get out and experience America in its trueness, and to use that time to pray and reflect and think and talk and dream. And Route 66, as often happens, when new chapters open, you're not necessarily looking for it. And there it is. And it has, without a doubt, impacted our lives. We're now in all the B&N and Books A Million stores nationwide, plus it's a ton of independent retail stores across Route 66. We're in 2,500 hotel rooms in the 8 states. Our digital edition is popular worldwide. Our team members are everywhere. We print in St. Louis. Cheryl is one of our editors, and she is in Edwardsville, so in Southern Illinois. Nick is an editor, and he's over in Amarillo. David is the lead photographer, and he's in Ohio. I'm up in Toronto right now. We're just everywhere. And we have a ton of wonderful, enthusiastic international subscribers. Even today, we got new subscribers from India. Domestically, we get people from places that you wouldn't expect, like Hawaii or Alaska. No connection to Route 66 in perception, but there they are, and they're passionate and they're excited. And, it's just very exciting. So, since we discovered the Mother Road, we've traveled it 8 times now, and we're anxious to do it again. We couldn't get back across because of COVID earlier this year. So we drove all across Canada to do an article on Canada's Route 66, which check out our website, you'll see it. This year, the borders open and hopefully will stay open. Ian and Jenny returned, by the way, in 2019. They were so impacted by that first journey. They came back 2 years later, and we spent another 2 months on the road together. And Ian brought his daughter this time. He was so impacted. And they've been enormously dedicated too. And they both work for Root magazine now, and they're just very appreciated. Root writers have won prestigious awards for their articles in the magazine. So have our photographers. And yeah, so it's just the people that are exposed continue to grow in their passion. But that's our journey. That's my story. That's my journey to 66. Coming from Africa, an unlikely place to ever discover Route 66. And by doing so, in some ways, I sort of discovered a part of myself. And so has my family. And that has allowed us to really foster a whole platform to tell the stories of other people who discovered themselves 50 years ago or 5 years ago on Route 66 and are discovering America day in and day out. And that's very exciting as we just, continue to see that platform grow. As we enter 2022, we're excited to work with the Route 66 Alliance, the Illinois Route 66 Scenic Byway, the Road Ahead Partnership, each of the state associations, all of our amazing advertising partners, which we just adore. We have the best advertisers in the world. And it's interesting because our readers just love the advertising. And so we'll get constant comments from people saying, the advertising isn't something I want to flip through. It's actually something that's like an add-on, something that it's part of the stories, if you will. And we'll get tons of people saying, oh, by the way, I was already booked into this hotel or that hotel. But then I seen this place advertised, or I was going to stay in this town, but then I seen this town down the road advertised, and they looked really cool. And they were en route, so I actually canceled my reservations or my itinerary to actually visit that hotel or restaurant or attraction, or to stay in this town. We find that really awesome because our partners are, they're not just trying to sell. It's like a marriage. They have a wonderful destination with great experience to offer somebody who's going to go, and our readers are great people looking for that experience. And so we bring them two together. So in some ways, we're almost like, we see ourselves as the Route 66 wedding chapel. And we just love it. And, we just thank all of you guys. And it's things like what we're doing today and this weekend. And it's through people who are behind things like the Miles of Possibility conference that really allow us to do what we're doing. So yeah, that's all I have. And so I just want to thank you guys for your patience.